in general. But, if you have like 10,000 people on the list, what's your open rate? Maybe 20%, 25%.
Yeah.
And then how many people click on your offer, right? But man, like if you sent like 30 envelopes, right? Handwritten envelopes to somebody with a thank you and appreciation note and like a special gift for them because they spent some time with you or they did something, that's a fucking 100% open rate. You know what I mean? And how are this going to make them feel?
Yeah.
And I don't think people do that enough anymore, man. It's like the lost art of connecting, right? But people want to have this magic answer, like step 1, step 2, step 3, and I'm like, yeah, step 1, fucking go to all the events. Step 2, like reach out, man. Be human. Go talk to people. Buy somebody a drink. And but it's like there's I don't know if you ever heard of the like formula?
No.
So this is a good thing to keep in mind, right? Like the like formula. So basically, likability. How does somebody get to like you and to connect with you more? It's proximity. So proximity is obviously, the more time you spend around someone. And proximity nowadays can be like, FaceTime is proximity essentially. Just an example, like if you walked, down here every day and you walk your dog and like there's a girl that comes by and she's walking her dog and you do it every day for 2 months, like it'll be more natural. She'd feel like she kind of knows you, even though she's never talked to you. She'd actually like you more. This is like proven science, right?
Wow.
And then so it's proximity, frequency, duration, and intensity. So frequency is obviously the more often you're around someone.
Yeah.
Duration, the longer you're around someone. And intensity is stuff like, look, we might be able to meet and have some drinks, and all of a sudden we're having like this deep conversation about our lives and like, divorce and business and crazy shit, right? It's an intense conversation. So those things bump up likability, right? Which is a great lesson, honestly, for things like dating and shit like that. But it's also a great lesson for marketing because if, people are like, oh, man, I see your videos everywhere locally. And I'm like, yeah, proximity, frequency, duration, right?
Right,
like,
nice.
And now, and it's like some of them might be like, hey, 16 core exercises and 33 hip mobility drills. But then I also got the podcast and I might be talking about something really personal, right? So there's some intensity there because you might be going like, oh, man, shit, I got divorced too and I failed and I was, you know what I mean? Like you feel the connection there. So that increases likability. And I try to teach that to people as far as, so you go back to the events. I was at proximity. I was there frequently. I was there, people are like, dude, you're a fucking everything. And I'm like.
But with that, what you've just said, that order and that list, I feel like you do that anyway, and then you've been doing that, and then you've realized what you're actually doing or not, rather than working on it.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's
natural networking to you.
A lot of times you go back and you go, like, you know how you study something and you go, oh shit, I've been doing that.
Yeah.
Now I have a framework for it, and I can actually teach it to someone because I understand that. I do think that it's one of those things that naturally you have to be, to be interesting, you have to be interested. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think many times people just want to extract. You know what I'm saying? Like, and not give enough.
Yeah.
And because you're so like driven to like, oh, I just want to make it. I want to just make it. Like, there's this fucking, significance thing that I want to make $1 million next year, right? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, I keep asking you why, and you realize you just want to do it because to feel some form of status and happiness and whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I went to the Perform Better seminar. When was that?
That was in August.
A few months ago now.
Yeah.
And I went there and I went in some of the lectures and they were like, ugh. But then we went for lunch. We were at lunch for an hour, and I learned more from you in that 1 hour than I did from all them seminars for the full 3 fucking days. And, so when I got home, my wife was like, "Was it worth it?" And I went, "It was worth it because I got to spend time with Luka, and I built a relationship with you, and you give us some ideas on. I think it was marketing. It was the marketing, social media. That's something that you're big at, right? You put a lot of time and energy into your marketing.
Yeah, I try to study. Like, I'd say that I really, really am I would say I'm into the principles of marketing, right? I mean, I study marketing, period, but what a lot of people will do is go to the tactical stuff before they go to understanding the principles of human psychology.
What do you mean the principles, like the depth of it?
Absolutely. Like, put it this way. Look, I mean, I don't think Facebook's going to go anywhere, but, if it did, right? Facebook's a platform, right? Like, understanding platform matters, but understanding principles, right? If I meet you face to face and I'm like, all right, I want to influence Tony to go in a certain direction with his thinking, like, that's a principle of marketing, right? Like, and that's human psychology. So you got to understand that, because it's easier to know the principles and then adapt to a platform than it is to know a platform but never fucking know the principles.
Right.
That's like somebody telling
That
you
makes sense.
in training, right? Like, hey, do 6 reps and 8 reps. Okay, cool. So when you do these programs, like the first 2 weeks do this many reps, the second 2 weeks do this many reps, right? Okay, cool. And you do it and you have some success. But then you hit a plateau and it's like you don't know what the fuck to do because you just know some tactical stuff. But what if you understood the principles of the adaptation of strength, the nervous system, the muscular system, right? All these, like, the energy systems, how they work. See, now I can do whatever. I can fucking pick things out of anywhere and apply them to that. I can go to a different platform and go like, all right, how do we communicate this message on this platform? And like, I never go away. You know what I'm saying? Like, where it's like, you've heard like of businesses back in the day where it's like they were fucking dominant on Google. Right? Google changed the algorithm, and the next day they went from doing 10 million to 0, right? And it's like, what the fuck, right? Now, if those guys understood principles of marketing, they'd be fine because they'd adapt to other platforms, right? But I think that that's what's missing. And see, I'm a huge fan of marketing, not only because marketing is communication. That's all it really is if you think about it, right? And I think that there's huge white space in how people communicate. And any, like, talk about, fitness business, talk about things like boxing, martial arts, any other business. Like, when you're communicating with your team, right, or employees, I hate saying employees, but I'd rather say team, communication, you know what I mean? Empathy, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, right? When you're communicating to a marketplace or your client, if you don't have social intelligence, emotional intelligence, and you don't know how to communicate, like, you're toast, you know what I mean?
Right.
And yet there's still all these conversations, like, and don't get me wrong, like, the X's and O's matter, but, in training you have people arguing around, like, man, what's the best rep range, and, should we go past 15 reps because it's metabolic and da-da-da, whatever, right? Like, and the thing is, but like Susie Sue, she just wants fucking someone to understand her, and the thing is, like, what is marketing? I mean, like, people want to feel like you're understanding them. They feel like you have empathy.
Communication and that emotion. So you done a talk on your event in your business summit about the emotional connection that you build with people, and that's kind of what you're seeing with the communication, right? With that, because you're communicating with them, you're building that emotional connection with them, and then that's the best way to market. Right?
Well, put it this way, people choose different ways of marketing, right? Because it's like you have curiosity, and then you have positioning, and you have all these different ways to do it. But at the end of the day, look, people want to know, like, positioning yourself is important, right? Like, you go, hey, you know what? Like, dude, I have an Olympic medal, and, like, I was a pro fighter. Like, that gives you positioning in boxing, for sure. But the thing is, at the end of the day, the person still has to go, like, he gets me.
Right,
You know what I mean? And that's the empathy part. And, like, in your marketing, there has to be empathy, right? Like, I understand what you're going, like, and even if you haven't experienced it, like, put yourself in positions that you can understand them. Like, yeah, I completely understand. We've had a lot of clients that felt just like you, and here's what they, this is what they figured out, right? Like, and because now people go, I mean, look, boxing, fitness, these are all scary fucking things for most people. Let's be real, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is the marketplace, it's changing for the better in certain areas for sure. And I definitely don't want to, don't want to crap on it, because there's so many good people, coming up in the industry that I love. But it's still, a lot of fitness is marketing to fit people to get fitter. And there's this humongous marketplace that, like, it's still scared. I mean, I know they walk into my gym, and it's like, I'm really, really adamant about how they get treated, like, right when they walk in, so that they feel comfortable. Because, look, for that person, it's just like, fuck, like, weights and people, and they're only seeing fit people, even though we have, like, everyone, right? Like, every type of person you can imagine. But so they get afraid. So the wall comes up, this threat, you know what I mean? And as soon as you got threat, it's game over. But same thing, like, hey, look, if I just was funnily so last week helping a friend out that's training me for boxing now, right? Like, and I'm looking at his site, and I'm like, the first thing that pops up is this video. It's a cool video, but I'm looking at it from the eyes of, the people that he's training, and I'm like, man, a pro boxer might be excited about this video, but everybody else is gonna be scared shitless.
Yeah.
So they're going there, and it's like, oh man, that's cool. It's not for me though. Right. So it's like, what type of video are you gonna put up there that's gonna be like, oh man, like, these are people just like me. They get me. They understand, right? And, like, so you have to study. You have to have conversations with your clients. You have to, you know what I mean? Like, you have to, like, really dig deep to find out.
Do you think you can learn that though? Like, like the conversation, is that something that obviously you can work on to get better, but is it like it's kind of like a personality? Do you think a personality trait?
And innately, look, I definitely think that certain people are, because of their experiences growing up and people they were around and everything else, that they're naturally more, I would say, have better communication skills, or they're more empathetic or whatever. But anything can get improved, and like there's certain things that you just have to improve, right? Like in the fitness business world, it's one of these things. Like, look, if you want to be successful at business and you have a gym, like you have to learn business. Fuck it. I mean, or you partner with somebody who's really good at business, right? Like, but still, I would say like you have to get good at business. It's there's coaching, and then there's the business of coaching. You know what I mean? So I mean, let's say under coaching you could say whatever, real estate, fitness, box, whatever, right? Like, and then there's the business coaching, systems, sales, marketing, fulfillment, like team leadership, like. These are two different things, and you could be a monster here, and you'll probably do well, but at a certain point in time, like how do you scale? How do you create a system so that the business can keep growing? Like how do you bring people on board? I mean, you can't fuck around, and it's funny because like sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. People are better to just be like the practitioners, right? Yeah. And dominate that way and not worry about shit, right? Right. But if you go into that, like I do think when to come back to your question is like. Anybody can get better at like becoming better communication, becoming a more personal person. And if, like I've known like Jay Ferrugia or even Craig Ballantyne for a long time, and like man, they've changed tremendously in that area. Like I've changed tremendously in that area. Right, I know a lot of people, Krebs has, and that was because of the work. You know what I mean?
That's what I think of when I think of that. What I said, like I heard Jizz talk at your event, and he spoke about how he was overweight kid and he was shy and he wouldn't really be outspoken. And now he goes that extra mile to be outspoken and be that person, like not center of attention. Well, I guess center of attention. Like you done that thing at your event where what was it called when you all got
the improv
on the stage. So yeah, I mean he's worked hard at that and it's worked for him. So how I met Steve Krebs before I met you is through a guy called Paul Mort.
Paul Mort,
yeah,
my guy.
So he's from my area. I don't know if you noticed the accent's pretty similar. So, and I met Paul. Paul tweeted us one time and I remember I was on the airplane and he said, "If you're in LA, I'll meet you for coffee." I didn't know who the fuck he was, but I seen his profile picture was the Paul Moore podcast, so I started listening to the podcast and I fucking loved it, and that's what got me into podcasting. So I connected with him, and one thing led to another. I met Steve and all that, but Paul was always promoting that. Wake Up Warrior is what it's called?
Yeah.
So Wake Up Warrior.
Wake Up Warrior, yeah.
And that's where you met Paul, right?
So I've known Morty for like a long time. But like he went into Wake Up Warrior, but we knew each other before then because we were speaking at different events and stuff.
So Wake Up Warrior, because I seen him promoting this and I was like, oh fucking hell, that's like I mean I'm from the north of England. It's like where everything's it's a kind of black or white, but like this was like. Fuck, it's like a bit of a, I don't know, over the top for me. Like I seen some videos where there's guys lying in the sand and they're getting shouted at by the guy in charge. But I know that it's changed Paul's life and it's changed Steve's life and I don't know, maybe your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
talk about that. Let me know about.
So here's the thing, right? Like at a certain point in time, the right thing comes and it's the right thing for you then, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
Right, and for me that was, and like me, Morty, and actually Morty went first, and Krebs went. Like I talked to Krebs, and he was like, "Dude, this will be good for you," because I was going through like, I got divorced. I was going through like all types of crazy shit in my life, and like I knew that I needed something like that. That felt like I mean, I was anxious even talking about it, so I knew that was probably the thing I needed to do. I was like,
tell me about it. How would you explain Wake Up Warrior?
The simplest way of doing it is like, man, okay, so, I was a person that like really pushed the limits on the side of like my business, right? And fitness. I mean, that fitness was natural to me. I've been in, basketball and pro sports. And
right.
So like training to me was just like part of my life, right? And in the business arena, I was the same way, like just obsessed, relentless, right? And so if you, with Wake Up Warrior, it was one of the first places where you kind of go like, okay, look, there's kind of 4 areas in life, right? Now, there's different programs that will say 5, and we could discuss that later, but, body, being, balance, and business, right? So being is your spirituality, whatever that means, right? Whether you believe in God, Buddha, your your connection to self, whatever that might be, right? Balance is your relationships. So family, if you're significant other or maybe, friends, family, like everybody that's close to you. And then business and body is simple, right? That's the ones I was talking about. And, in life, what happens a lot of time, what happened to me is that like I pushed the training and the business side of stuff. And I didn't even understand like how, I was like, because I was chasing significance. When we have these things, when I have the money and like we're going to get there, then we'll be fine, right? Like,
Yeah.
And in that process, I burnt down a lot of shit around me, a lot of relationships. It was kind of like the catalyst to also my divorce and all type of different stuff, right? Like, and but at that point in time, I couldn't see it, right? I just couldn't, like, that's who I was, right? I mean, I was like, man, this is what you do. You push like a maniac, right? And that was painful. I mean, like the whole, everything around, divorce is a very, very shitty situation emotionally and whatnot. And after, like my relationships after. And so I was in a place where actually I was doing really well, like from the standpoint of like, oh, well, people know me, whatever, like I got money. And I mean, I specifically remember the day where I woke up and I was like, man, I feel like really empty. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I got to this place where, you kind of chase this thing, the thing that is going to fulfill you.
What you think is success? Money, cars, women?
Yeah, and I mean, well, for me, definitely materialistic stuff. And I grew up in like, I was born in '81 in Yugoslavia, socialism, right? And I moved to London for a while. And like before we moved to London, like I didn't even, I don't know how many TV channels we had, like none, like one. I don't even know. I was playing outside all the time, being a knucklehead. And, then we went to London, it was like, oh shit, like there's this whole world out there and like people have things. And then when we moved back to Slovenia, in the 91 there was the war. So 91 afterwards, it was the Balkan War and it wasn't Yugoslavia anymore, it was Slovenia. And, you watch Yo MTV Raps and I'm like, oh man, I want the fucking chains and the cars. And everybody seeks status right now. We could dig deeper into why that is. And you'll see a lot of doctors and psychologists talk about like, that if you weren't, if you had something missing, when you were younger, like whether it's connection, being taken care of, being valued as much, you know what I mean? Like you end up seeking that, right? In some form or another. And I know I did. I mean, like, when I was younger, I was doing a lot of dumb shit from like robbing and stealing to, organized crime as well. And, and it was, but all of those things were seeking some sort of significance and power, right? And we seek it through different ways. And, with that said, like that kept going. I kept going like when, I got into business, like, man, I got to build the best business, this, that, and the other. And you burn all these things around. So for me, Wake Up Warrior was like this kind of slap in the face of like, hey, look, like this, this is what you're doing. But like, there is a way to actually develop all these areas. There is a way to be successful in this, but also be a great person, have a great relationship.
Right.
There's a way to kind of connect to yourself or God or whatever, like I said, your belief system is, while you're improving everything, right? So, that shift of frame and like, kind of looking at myself and like having to address some really difficult realities, like that in itself was a big shift for me, if that makes sense, right? And the thing is that just was the program at that point in time. And like, I mean, Garrett's definitely been a huge mentor for me. And like I said, for some people, I've had people go like, man, fuck that. Like, it's not connecting to me. And, or where Warrior's gone, which, like I said, like it's different for everybody. And somebody goes to a Tony Robbins event, and like that's the catalyst. Somebody reads Byron Katie's book or Debbie Ford's work, and it's like that begins the introspection and going down a path.
That's what I've noticed. Like now getting older, like there's that many people in the world. The market is for everyone, really.
Absolutely.
There's someone will always be interested. Someone will always be a fan of whatever you put out there. So. Now, moving forward, you've got your gym. You're not looking to open any more gyms, as far as I know, right?
Nah. So, my thought process is, and a while back, I actually wanted to, like, I was like, man, I'm going to dominate and just open tons of gyms, and then you go through the process of life and business and growth, and you go like, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And really, my mindset right now is just like, I want to have one gym and make that the best gym on the planet.
Right.
Like that's it, and then teach a lot of the what. And, in some form of another right now, like I'm coaching 70, 80 different, fitness businesses and have for 5 years. So
wow.
Because, I also run the Training for Warriors business division, as well as my own coaching program. So it's
See
like.
what I mean? But the thing is on the pies.
a lot of shit that's going on. but in the last, and I've been doing coaching. Me and Krebs were doing coaching together for like I don't know 4.5 years,
Yeah.
5 maybe. So I've been doing coaching in some form or another for 6 because I was actually doing it before we put the pack together. So it's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gym owners, and having the insight of like, what like where people get stuck and what they truly want and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there's only a certain amount that want to scale, and I'm helping some other bigger companies that are now like kind of reaching out.
Yeah.
And I'm consulting.
What's the sort of problem? Cause we're looking at scale right now. What's the sort of problems that people come up with? The business owners with scaling.
Man, okay, so the problem that got you here won't get you there. Okay, so it's like getting to 100 grand, you got certain problems. Then getting to 300, certain problems. Getting to $500,000, getting to $1 million. I would say that as soon as you start getting, like for instance, where the place that you're in, man, it's systems, but it's people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is the hardest thing in business is managing people.
Right.
And that takes a certain skill set. And I would say that one, you have to either bust your ass to like get really good at it.
Right.
And I went down that route because I am like very curious and very driven on that side of things. Or you have to bring somebody that's really good at that because you'll, for instance, I'll give you an example, right? But like, let's say you have the best. Right now I'm building systems. You have the best systems that are for sales, for customer service, for orientations, for marketing, for everything, right? Does that mean that the person that is on your team will do that and will do it with gusto and will do it with emotion and care, right? No, it absolutely does not. So on paper and in video and in whatever, that can all be great. But then does that transfer to people? And so for that, you have to be, and that's leadership. Obviously, it's leadership and influence. And that's why everybody should fucking study that, right? But like, how to get people motivated or not just motivated, but like I'm a big fan of, helping the people that are on my team get to their vision while we're going towards the vision of what Vigor Ground is. Right. And so that means that at the beginning, you have to be really good at filtering like who's the right person for that. You know what I mean? And once again, that means that like you have to get your own bullshit out of the way and your own kind of I would say stereotypes and everything else, or bring somebody else that's done that, been successful with it, and do that. I would say that like from all my experience of building businesses, that like that is definitely one of the biggest things, especially in the service industry.
The
like
community.
Ours.
What you do great, what you're telling me as well, like again when we were speaking down at the Perform Better event, was about your charity events. You've been putting a charity event on every Sunday for how long now? You've been doing it for
10 years, man. Almost
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
And here, man, this is first of all, good shit on putting it on. I challenge you to do it, and you did it, man. I love that.
You did, right?
I love that. But it's something that, man. I mean, I really am like I kind of got I got addicted to doing that. Like so it's a positive addiction, like helping people, right? And so yeah, we're getting close to our 500 that we've done 500 charity events, and
wow.
So this is kind of like taking off a whole life of its own. And actually, in January, I almost want to just put it out there so that I keep myself accountable to it. But me and a friend of mine who works kind of like in that field, we're going to start like these 9-week after-school programs for kids that like need that, like let's just say like knuckleheads like I was. But it's actually going to be, right now we're working on the intricacies of how we're going to run it, what we're going to do. But it's going to be a combination of personal development, training, but also boxing.
But again, something like that, what you're looking to put on, that takes a lot of time, and again, systems as well. So like what I said, like for me, if I'd done the things that you do, I think I would be spread way too thin, but you seem to be getting it done.
It's at a certain point in time, you start looking at collaborations, so like this is a perfect example of where this is something I've wanted to do for a while, and I fucking hate waiting. So I hate I hate waiting for a grant or for, somebody to come along and say like, hey, we'll help you out. Like I hate that. Like if I feel like this is something that's needed in the community, this is something that can change a lot of people. And I'm inspired by it, and it'll give opportunities for other people, to kind of to do their thing. Then fuck it. Like I'm like, let's go. And so I knew the person that I needed to connect to with it for it. Like who was the right person? Like I'm like, this is what I do great. Man, here's what Marcus does, and like he's done it, so I know he can bring that to the table. And we met up, and we were like, we had first draft. He created a presentation. We're meeting again. Like we always take the next step, and it's like let's execute on it. And and I think that's the other part of it. Like when you drop the ego, you start like to grow businesses, right? Or to do like big shit. Like you can't do it alone. Like I mean, the whole self-made man. Like I believe in it to a degree, but let's be real, man. Like fucking, did you get where you are without any help from anybody?
Yeah.
Like man,
Right.
we've all had help.
Yeah.
And so once you drop the ego and go like, look, there's just shit that I'm not that great at, or that somebody's way better than me at. Like, how do I connect with them and make it a win-win situation? And the only way I'll do any type of business is if it's a win-win.
That's
like
awesome.
that's it.
And the thing about your charity events as well, like obviously it's building community, what helps the business. But after speaking to you, I was like, why the fuck does he do this? But you really seem like you genuinely care and you genuinely want to help people, which is pretty rare. Well, in LA, but it's pretty, it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare,
On the business side of things, the way that I try to pitch it is, because I know you're gonna be like, what? You got another thing going on? Like, yeah, but it's, we're trying to start this local kind of small business thing where everybody does charity work, right? But
you told me about that.
but it's like
amazing.
people are like, well, what the fuck's in it for me?
Yeah.
And you got to go with the like, well, dude, this is going to build your community and culture, and it's going to get you more leads, and it's going to make you more money, right? You have to pitch them that, right?
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, right? But I think that once it's kind of like, I mean, it's maybe a fucking shitty analogy, but you get hooked on dope, but it's like you get hooked on this in a good way because, when you give to people and you see how they're fulfilled by it, I don't give a fuck who you are unless you're a sociopath. Like you're gonna feel good, and you're gonna be like, man, what's going on here? Like, why am I feeling like this? And in fitness, everybody is like, man, I came in to, I only want to help people, because you get the whole thing like where you're like, hey, man, like sell higher ticket packages or raise your rates, and people start going, well, I'm only in fitness to help people. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. Okay, can you help people with? Tell me, can you help more people with $1 million or $1,000? Like, oh, well, $1 million. Okay, cool. Make the $1 million, give it away. You know what I'm saying? Like, but don't tell me that you don't want to, make the $1 million because, like, so, part of my mentality is like, how can we make those two things work together? And you can. And there's actually Yannick Silver, who maybe you've heard of, like, is a great marketer, but he wrote a book called Evolved Enterprise, and it talks about how the future of business really is like, companies like, for instance, like Tom's, right, where it's a for-profit company. Yeah. But they're doing amazing shit. I was, greatly inspired by them.
Tom's the shoes.
Yeah, the Tom's the shoes, Warby Parker glasses.
Right.
And, we could go on and on and on. There's a lot of incredible models, of doing Evolved Enterprise. And, I got, not last year, was it last year? Last year, the year before, I got to go to, Necker Island and hang out with Richard Branson, and that was a phenomenal
Wow.
experience for me. But it really kind of like spurred that even more, here's a guy that's got, like, whatever you want. And, like, he really, truly is dedicated to making the world a better place.
That's amazing.
Have personal conversations with the guy, and you're like, man, this guy, what are you going to do once you have, like, billions, right? You start wanting to leave a legacy. And so I started, kind of going like, man, I want to, actually, the irony of it is I was invited to go to Necker Island with Richard Branson because I got voted on to have the most evolved enterprise as a small business because I explained what we were doing. And it just fired me up to do more of that, like in a smarter way. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
awesome.
Because some of the shit is like you just do it and then you kind of figure it out and you go like, oh, there's a better way to do this.
Yeah.
Right? But I would have you consider and anybody consider that like that it only does good. Now, does it take some effort? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's like you want to differentiate yourself. You want to do good in your community. So now we're actually making all of the stuff narrower to be more involved locally versus because we've done stuff for like 200 plus charities, and I mean from big ones to small ones to individuals to you name it. But I really want to narrow it down and make it youth associated and make it local.
I love that
because it makes it more like impactful, right? Like you
narrow it down. I love that. I think that's fantastic. One question I want to ask you when we met a few weeks ago, but I never did it, is about reading. You read books, right?
Yeah.
Where the fuck do you get the time to read books? Like, where's this time? You seem to have more time than me, than everyone else. One obviously is the answer. You make time, but I got into this flow of just doing things a certain way. So I read 20 minutes in the morning. So, like, would you say that you've got your like days like mapped out systematic?
Not all of them, but a lot.
Yeah.
More and more. And structure. I thought the structure was was something that would hold you back. But truly, but structure actually equals freedom.
Does that take a lot of discipline to do that?
Absolutely. I think people try to do too much too fast, and that was me as well. And it's just like nutrition coaching, like you don't, like if you came to me and failed 10 times and I go like, all right, look, Tony, we're going to give you a really detailed fucking meal plan with every meal at a certain time and you got to weigh your shit out. Like, even if you're like, okay, like you're fucking not doing it. It's too much, and there's a ton of this is like studies left and right is like, if you try to change more than 3 habits at once, success rate is like 5 or 7%. Horrible, obviously.
Right.
Like you wouldn't bet that on that in Vegas, right? Like 2 habits is like 30+%, and then 1 habit is like 87%.
Wow.
They're there, so basically like changing a habit at a time is very successful. Doing more than that is not. So
yeah, I like that.
If you think about it right now, if you went home and said, okay, cool, I'm going to organize my whole fucking week into blocks, dude, you're going to fail miserably. Right?
Yeah.
But if you
one
went
thing at a time.
One thing at a time. But if you say, hey, look, I'm going to do this 2-hour block 4 or 5 days a week, and like I'm just going to work on that. Like that's all I'm going to work on. And I'm going to get this shit down for the next, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And what happens is, one, if you're successful, what does your brain do? Like your brain is like, man, I succeeded at this, right? If I give you 10 things to do and you do 2, you feel like a failure.
Right.
Right? And so there's 2 things that are happening here. One, scientifically, this is just proven to work better because you don't get the overwhelm. And because when you're overwhelmed and anxious, fight, flight, or freeze, you don't do shit. And number 2 is, I want somebody to feel successful. Like if, you do a habit, you succeed at it, and you go like, fuck it, I can do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so that gives you more confidence, right? Because how do you build confidence? Well, you take action and you complete things. But if how do you break self-esteem? Well, you say you'll do something and then you don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's like a credit and debit account, right? Like you basically keep putting into your debits when you're like, tomorrow I'm going to fucking get up at 4 a.m. and I'm going to work out, right? But you've been waking up at 9 a.m. That's a fucking big-ass gap, Like, hey, you know what? Wake up at 8:30, go for a 15-minute walk for a week, And at the end of the week, you're like, man, I can do this. All right, maybe I'll, push it a little bit, right? So I think that's one of the key things when you come to, it's really easy to go and look at somebody that's massively productive and not think about how long it took them to get there. And then you look at yourself and you go like, shit, like, look at that gap, but fuck it. Next week, I'm going to do exactly what that guy does. And it's like, massive fail. Like, you got kids and got to pick them up and do this and that. And it just doesn't work out. But, if it's individual to you and you go like, okay, well, what's one thing that I can do right now that I could change that would make me get more out of my day? And then just start working on that, man.
Yeah.
And like, don't trip about the rest.
I fucking love that. I absolutely love that. And that's the best thing for me about doing podcasts is getting guests on and learning about shit like this, and I learned so much on podcasts, and that there has been a big takeaway for me. Is this, I know you, what's your podcast called? Vigor
Life
podcast.
Yeah.
What do you talk about on that?
I mean, it's because I have guests on. Like I try to do everything live, just like this, right?
Yeah.
I won't do anything over Skype and shit like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've had everything from Christian Thibodeau and John Russell on muscle building, Joel Jamieson on energy systems. But like me personally, I talk a lot about leadership and coaching,
right?
And like stuff from the principles to the tactics, like things that we're talking about right now. How do you, like, for instance, if you're in any type of coaching field, like most people like really kind of lose right at the beginning because they don't know how to communicate. So like they create threat on a client, right? So there's like, if there's stereotypes, if there's judgment, you're automatically lost, right? So it's like, how do you like communicate? What are the things that you say? Like, what are some strategies that you can apply that would go, I mean, I talk a lot about fitness, nutrition, but I also talk about business because principles are very, like they carry over. Make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So for instance, let's look at goal setting and outcomes. Like, no matter what outcome you have in your life, right? Like, let's say outcome is, and make XYZ money, right? $10,000 a month, whatever, right? This is just a round number. There's a certain amount of skill sets that you have to create to get that, right? So it's like outcome, and then below it is skill sets. What are the skill sets you need to get that 10,000, right? It's like, one may be like become a better coach. One may be marketing, right?
So it's kind of like getting your goal and working backwards from it, right?
Working backwards from it. But I think people work backwards sometimes. Like, it's good to have frameworks. So this is a great framework for people to take. Is like, you got your outcome, and then you have a set of skill sets that you need to build. So for instance, if you want to add $5,000 a month in speaking gigs, right? What's one of the things you got to do? Like, you got to get fucking great at speaking, right? Okay, so then those outcomes, you can break them down to daily practice. So what is a daily practice that you need to do to build that skill set that you can achieve that outcome?
Right.
So the daily practice might be like,
Fucking
well,
love it,
every
yeah.
day spend 15 minutes on your speaking. Like you're reading a book on speaking, you're practicing it in front of a video camera, like in recording yourself. You go to a voice coach or maybe an improv session, right? There's a number of things that you could do daily, right, or weekly. But that's how I work with everything, right? If I want to achieve this,
Yeah.
what are the things, what are the, not just the skill sets, but what are the daily practices? Because that's very clear to you, right? Like if I tell you, hey, look, Tony, like 4 days a week, you got to shoot a podcast.
Famous. Go on.
That's very like it's not gray, like it's black and white. Hey, did you shoot your 10 minutes of video today?
Right.
Oh shit, I didn't. Right, like you have something to tick off, and I think if people broke down like these massive goals that they have into skill sets and daily practices, and just go like, well, let me work on these two, and like let me forget about the rest.
I think what you're seeing there, that structure, like you said, it works with anything, and I think if you do that, it's hard to feel. Would you say it's hard to feel if you've got your goal and like you see it, you put them in the skill sets what you need to achieve that, then you work on that. It's kind of hard to feel.
Here's the thing is the thing that I want the person to say to me if I'm coaching them is like, that sounds easy. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then you can do it for
sound easy,
right? It's like for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and there's actually so this is based in motivational interviewing. This is a great question. I ask this question now on every area of coaching that I do. Is on a scale of 1 to 10, like how confident are you that you can do this 90% of the time, right? And going like, hey, 0 being like completely unconfident and 10 being absolutely like confident that you can do it. And if people say 8, 9, or 10, we'll actually go ahead and make them do that habit, right? Or they'll do the habit. If they say 7, 6, or anything below, right? That's too much. That's too hard for them. But I'll even ask like, hey, so what would it take for you to be an 8 or 9? And they'll actually start answering their own own questions and own problems. But the kicker is here because if you do not believe that you can achieve it, you will not do it.
Right.
I mean, this is brain science, right? Like, I mean, so you gotta kind of have, this is a tendency of a lot of people that are in coaching, like, oh man, you got to do this. Well, Tony, your business is fucked up, so you got to do this, and that. Okay, cool. All right, bye.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I just fucking vomited all this information, but like, did we even get anywhere? Because the thing is, autonomy is you making a choice.
Just being fucking shit on. We're sitting under a tree and I've just been fucking shit on.
But I gotta check myself.
Shit.
And nobody.
We call that shit for luck in England. It's supposed to be good luck. Go on, mate.
Great things will happen. But it's that I think that's the kicker too, is like not vomiting like advice, like information. People are drowning in information, man. They're looking for transformation, and transformation is individual, and it's how do you take the next step that makes sense for you, that you're confident in doing, and then let's get you consistent with that and then build on that, right?
Yeah, I think what you said there, drowning in information, is that's the reason why I haven't listened to a podcast in months, because I was listening to all these podcasts and I was getting so much fucking information, I didn't have time to take action on them, right?
So, I mean, this is how I at least this is my kind of framework for solving this when I read books or when I do podcasts or anything like that. Everybody gets their aha moment, right? Like, so I read a lot of books at the same time. I'm reading a book, The Power of Moments, from Chip and Dan Heath, which are great authors. But, like I get to a point where I'm like, oh shit, this is really good, right? Yeah. And then so I get a revelation out of it, and then I write down the revelation, and then what would the action step in my business look like? So specifically, right? Rather than just writing some shit out, I'm like, okay, what would that look like in my business? And specifically, it was some stuff on like how to make people feel amazing when they come in as an intern or as a coach, like what experience you create. So I wrote it down, and then I just put it in Evernote, and I just leave it there because it's not on my list of stuff to do right now, but I don't want to lose that knowledge, that wisdom that I extracted from something, right? So I just have, a bunch of different like files where I put down these thoughts that I get and how they would apply to my business. Or sometimes it might be like I do a lot of shit like where I might be doing something. I'm like, oh man, that'll be great for Tony. And I'll fucking write it down and be like, I got this idea for Tony, which by the way is a great practice to think of ideas for other people, because it just helps your brain like work in different ways and be able to solve different solutions for that. But that way I don't lose it, and now I'm not stressed about it, right? Because if you get through a podcast or something like that, and you're like, oh man, that was great. Yeah. And the next day I asked you like, so what'd you get from that? Well, like, what's the actionable step that you took from it? And you were like, well, I didn't. Then what the fuck did it do? I mean, hopefully it brainwashed you some in a positive direction, but the point of it is like you consume information so that you can extract something that's relevant to you and your business and your life and then put it down. I mean, if you know, think about Marcus Aurelius, meditations, think about the Bible, think about, you know, like any type of, I would say, spiritual work or anything else. It was people that put down, like they experienced stuff in life, you know, and from there they wrote down their wisdom and their revelations.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're doing that, why not like start writing out your own revelations? You know, and that's how you write books. That's how you implement stuff in your business that works or doesn't work, and then you know you have an answer from there too. You know, so I think that's the key is like when you are doing that, making sure that you're getting stuff that matters to you and then having an actionable step associated with it rather than just like, you know, leaving it to be.
I love it.
I mean?
Luka, this has been a fucking great podcast, mate, but my battery's about to run out. Luka, if people want to find you, where can they find you? Find out more about you?
The best places, so I'm very active on the Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance Facebook page. Put out a lot of videos and content. Then on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, all that good stuff. There's a podcast, which is the Vigor Life Podcast. And then on Instagram, either Vigor Ground Fitness or I'm even more active on my own one, which is Luka Hocevar, so LukaHocevar. Those are the best places. The website is vigorgroundfitness.com. There's a bunch of other stuff, but those are the main ones. You can find me on there. You message me from there.
And we'll put all of these links and all the social media in the show notes. So if you go to boxinglifepodcast.com/Luka, Luka, we'll get it all in there. But Luka, thanks, mate. And
my pleasure,
speak
brother.
soon.
Awesome.